Hey, good evening. Welcome to the Stokastic.com NFL Showdown live before lock. Baltimore Ravens, Cincinnati Bengals. We got a good one on our hands today. Greg, I screwed up though. I was doing all this other stuff, getting. What are you laughing at? Did I screw up?
Because I know what you're about to say to the audience, and it's funny to me.
No, that's not it. Oh, I screwed up thinking that we didn't have ownership, but I was looking at main slate. I screwed up because I was getting betting picks in. I was throwing picks into the Discord. I'm recording a video for Odd Shot. I'm doing all this stuff. And then I'm like, oh shit, I gotta actually enter contests. 20 minutes ago, I go in like a good hour before the slate. Everything's filled. So there was one left. It was like the mini flagship 30K prize pool 10K. So I had to jump in that. That's all I got. I got 20 lineups in today. That's all I got. I'm pretty upset about that. That one filled. But we're playing. It's just I totally forget. You ever do that before? Like when you're busy on a show?
Yeah, for sure. Like there are, especially for sports like I don't normally play. So the one for me the other day, Tuesday, there's no NBA. There's big NHL contests. And I go, all right, I'm going to play hockey today. It's going to give me, I don't have anything to do on Tuesday night. Other people are occupied with other stuff. I want to play some NHL DFS. The contest was full at like 2 p.m. or something like that. So by the time I went to go check it to reserve my lineups, it was already full. So no hockey for me. So yeah, I could relate.
All right. Well, here's the thing. We'll spare you guys the pleasantries because we've got an abbreviated show today. NBA locks late. We should be okay, though. Hopefully, many of you watched the strategy show as well. Matt and I broke all of that down. You ready to dive into this?
Let's do it.
All right. The only thing I could ask is help us feed that algorithm, baby. Hit that thumbs up. We're almost at 100 already. Appreciate you guys. Take a single second, atone for your sins this evening, and subscribe to the channel. It's free. You hate it? Click unsubscribe. You never have to see us again. Yeah, it's easier when we have an hour show. Who would have thought with a one game slate? Shout out to Chris Williams for gifting the memberships, but I think we'll be okay. I think we'll be good here. I'll actually throw it over to you because, I steered the ship this morning, generally do it at night. Where do you want to start? Because I got plenty of places that I think are really fascinating here.
I start just like right at the top with the MVP and captain options and kind of work from there, just because any slate that has Lamar Jackson as an option, particularly on FanDuel, like it matters for DraftKings also, but FanDuel, whenever you have a Lamar Jackson primetime slate, he's going to be like 50% owned. So I always think it's interesting, particularly for slates with him, to just figure out what you want to do in the multiplier spot. And then for FanDuel, I hate FanDuel slates that have Lamar Jackson just because he's so likely to be the highest scoring player, but then it's so hard to make unique lineups. So I think that for slates that are like this, it makes most sense to start captain.
Yeah, he looks pretty good. I mean, but I'm also kind of interested in a few other spots here that we need to talk about. If you guys watch this morning show with Gesicki and myself, you'll know some of the particular situations I'm referring to. One of them being Germaine Burton, Greg. You and I talked about him before. We talked about him, I think it was on Friday last week, right? And then he ended up, I think he was out at a casino, missed Saturday's walkthrough and meeting and everything. They made him a healthy and active on Sunday, and that all, was moot. But he's active now. And not only is Germaine Burton active, so here's where it gets a little bit sketchy because he's super cheap. And guys, just so you know, with Live Before Lock, like we're going to spend time on everybody, but when we have 45 minutes, there's certain guys that we'll probably spend less time on, and those are usually going to be some of the highest tier players that you're just jamming anyway. But how about the fact that Charlie Jones is out? Not that he had a significant role, but he's out. So you have Chase, Andre Osivas, no T. Higgins, no Charlie Jones. So it's Chase, Osivas, Trenton Irwin, Kendrick Pryor. I'm sure you know a lot about that fella. And Germaine Burton, who has really the highest untapped potential, the most unknown out of all of them, not named Jamar Chase, and he's dirt cheap. I will be trying to get to some, and if I don't get any, I honestly think I'll boost a little bit just in case, especially in Joe Burrow lineups.
Yeah. So Germaine Burton, I think we talked about him last Friday on the we talked about him last Friday was on the Sim show. And we talked about him just being a super, super boom bust wide receiver. And it ended up being a totally pointless conversation because he wasn't even active on Sunday. So there was no consideration to end up playing him for that slate. Bengals went out and had a big offensive game, and Burton just not involved, wasn't active. Here's the thing that's interesting about Germaine Burton and why personally I'm going to be overweight to the field to him. And he's my favorite punt option for tonight's slate. He's only had 2 catches so far this year, Loft. It's the same conversation we had the other day.
Yeah.
He's got 2 catches this year for 88 yards, averaging 44 yards per reception this year. Obviously not sustainable, but it tells you something. It tells you this is clearly somebody who is big play upside. And when the ball is thrown to him, it's downfield passes. Yep. By the way, also, this was a guy who was a standout wide receiver in college. He was a high draft pick, 3rd round. And then the reasons that he hasn't been active for the Bengals, it's been off the field stuff. Like, I know that people point to that video you'd referenced of him in the casino. I don't actually think that people like to make narratives about things like
was
that.
Was it even him?
Matter, but the guy went out. There's more context needed there. Like, was he skipping practice to gamble, or was he just happened to be at a casino at some point in time and somebody videoed it? Because people like to think that athletes should be like training or practicing or looking at a playbook 24 hours a day. And that's not always the case. But for Burton, he has had some issues with the team. It's led to him being inactive. It's led to some inconsistencies. But when he's on the field, he is big play upside. And for his price point and his ownership, only pulling 15% ownership, I find him to be a very good GPP target. He could very easily score 0 fantasy points, but all it takes is 1 or 2 catches at his price point, and he's probably going to be in the winning lineup.
You're right. The depth of targets, crazy. The depth of his 4 targets on the season.
Yeah.
But you're right. And there was a comment in chat too that said, I got to find it. I don't know who said it, but I guess that's unimportant, that Mike Gesicki is essentially a receiver. You would be right about that. Here's the difference though with Mike Gesicki. It was TJ Case. Here's the thing with Mike Gesicki though. Yes, he's basically just a slot receiver at this point. However, he's only playing, even with Eric all out, like Drew Sample probably plays a ton because all blocks. You have Tanner Hudson as well. They have 4 active tight ends almost every week. Mike Gesicki's only playing like 35 to 40% of snaps each week. So yes, he's a receiver, but he's not out there. He's not running routes on 100% of steps. Now, here's the crazy thing about Gesicki. You'll appreciate this, Greg. In the 4 games so far that he's played without T. Higgins, weeks 1, 2, 8, and 9, he has a 31% targets per route run rate. That is an astronomical number. Now, granted, he's running fewer routes, but when he's out there, he's getting targeted. Mike Gesicki's getting targeted a lot when he is out there. So, yeah, you can look at your Trenton Irwins, your Kendrick Pryors. Really don't. I wouldn't be surprised if Pryor doesn't see the field and it's just Irwin and Burton. That wouldn't surprise me. Also wouldn't surprise me if Burton's active and doesn't see the field. Yeah. I mean, he's the type of guy today that could have 2 receptions for 70 and a touchdown, Greg, or he could literally not step on the field.
Yeah, it is very live for him to play 0 snaps today. But we're talking about 1-game slates that have a crazy amount of variance. And honestly, most cheap players don't even end up scoring fantasy points anyway. And I'm just looking for the upside. And if I'm comparing all of the cheap players on the slate, Germaine Burton, Tanner Hudson, Drew Sample, Trenton Irwin, some of the guys who just went over there, it is pretty clear to me that Germaine Burton has the highest ceiling of those guys. And once again, just low-owned, cheap. He's somebody I want for tournaments.
Absolutely. And we got a lot of other stuff to talk about. Before we do, I'll throw this to you guys before we get into everything else. I'll get it out of the way quickly and early because it's important. If you've wanted to get access to all of our tools, the core package, it's a $99 value a month package. You sign up with any of our sportsbook partners using the link in the description. It's the first one there, whether you're mobile or on desktop, or the one that Jordan can throw in the chat. Sign up with any of them by simply clicking claim offer on any of them and deposit. Takes a minute to get instantly verified. Deposit, be like $10, get 200 in bonus bets. Bet 365, $10, get 200 in bonus bets. And also get a free month of our core package, which includes the Sims, the single lineup sim, ownership, boom bust, top stack, player projections, premium Discord. And really, you're just making better lineups and winning more money. And hell, even if you didn't, it was free. but you will. Right now is the best time to do it because Bet365, I say it every single Thursday. This is like, it's the best promo in the world right now. The $10 per every touchdown scored in bonus bets. Now you have to bet $50 cumulative parlay, same game parlay, but it's minimum odds of even money of plus 100. So you can get it as close to that. And per every touchdown scored, you have $10 in bonus bets. Greg, I've made over 300 in bonus bets just since October by betting these, not including I've won 3 of the 5 parlays I've made over the last 5 weeks. So we're talking 400 plus profit on that. But this game in week 5 between Baltimore and Cincinnati had 79 total points. There were 10 touchdowns. If that was a Thursday game, I'm not saying you get that again. It's $100 in bonus bets alone. So if you're going to do it, and if you're in those Bet365 states and you wanted to get access to our tools, do it on 365 tonight. Email us with a screenshot of your settled bet and the welcome email, but you got to click claim offer. Otherwise it doesn't work on that screen and you're in. Also, you can stack them. If you signed up at 4 sportsbooks or 4 pick'em sites in a non-legal betting state, you have 4 months of our core package for whatever sports you want. Not a bad offer, Greg.
Not at all. And while you're doing that, I was trying to look up the totals for the week. This game is the highest total of any game, not just of well, clearly the highest total of today, but all the totals of any game that's going to be played this week, 52.5. That is the highest total of any game. So this is the one that is most likely to yield the most bonus bets from those touchdowns as well.
I won't waste your time, but I could pull the bonus bets from the last 5 weeks. It's like 70, 70, 50, 60, and 40 from Thursday. So usually Bet365 did this. They're like, hey, Thursday night games are always low scoring. This year they've been insane. So 21 years old to gamble, gambling problem, call or text 1-800-GAMBLER. But no better time. Jump in, get those promos in all of those books. Bet365, the best one. But like I said, all of our tools for free when you use that link in the claim offer. Okay. Mark Andrews is another one. We're going to move around here, get to the really important stuff. Without Isaiah Likely, it's impossible for me to get away from Mark Andrews. He's at least $2,000 underpriced.
It's funny. We have a super chatter here from Nathan Perkins, and he said, thanks for the contact. He's playing 6 lineups. Then he wants to know what percentage would you have Andrews? And then he also said Chase, Henry, or Burrow if you had to pick. So it's a really good tie-in here because you just brought up Mark Andrews. And to answer Nathan's question regarding Mark Andrews, he currently shows up in across 150 lineups for me, a little over 50%. So if I'm just going to apply that to 6 lineups, I would say that if I was playing 6 lineups based on my current exposures, I would have 3 with Mark Andrews. And of those 3, one of them would probably be him in the captain spot. I think that he is a really good target to get to in DFS today for multiple reasons. First off, just the obvious one, no Isaiah Likely there. That is something that has to benefit Mark Andrews. But another part of this too is everybody kind of jumped off of Mark Andrews after the first week of the season, maybe even as early, and everybody was super high on Isaiah Likely. Since the first week of the season, Mark Andrews scored more fantasy points than Isaiah Likely. And if you look at the last handful of games, last game, it wasn't really a big one for Mark Andrews. They won 41-10. They didn't have to throw the football.
He threw like 20 times or something. Yeah, he didn't even, yeah.
Yeah. We look at the games prior to that, 5 catches against the Browns, 4 against the Bucks, 3 against Washington, 4 against the Bengals the last time they played. He's also scored 4 touchdowns over the course of their last 5 games. So you look at Mark Andrews, he's been way more involved in the offense as of late than he was earlier in the season. Now you've also got Isaiah Likely out of the picture. So I think that Mark Andrews is one of the best pass catching options on the entire slate. And I'm surprised he isn't more popular. Maybe not because people have just kind of been anti-Mark Andrews considering how he started the year. But yeah, I think that he's underpriced and underowned considering all the circumstances I just listed.
Couldn't agree more. I have 70% right now and 20% at the captain spot, and I'm not touching it. You know, so on the season, you know who leads the team in red zone and end zone targets? I'll tell you, Isaiah Likely. He's out. Over the last 4 weeks, Mark Andrews leads the Ravens in end zone targets, red zone targets, and receiving touchdowns. The tide has turned a little bit. Now, does that mean that he's going to have a monster game today and just totally break out? No. But if I were to ask you, where would you price Mark Andrews last season when Isaiah Likely was an afterthought? Greg, you'd easily put him at 6K. Easily.
Oh, way higher than that. Mark Andrews last year when he was, considered an elite fantasy tight end on a lot of these showdown slates, he'd be in like the mid to high 8K range, if not even in the 9K range.
which is insane. So yeah, it's a mispricing, obviously the injury, but the fact that there's no Isaiah Likely is a really big deal today. It's arguably the best value. And does that mean it's going to hit? No, but it's arguably the best value since Jordan Mason in week 1.
Yeah, I can't remember all the values for Showdown, but it's a good one. And then also for the other part of Nathan Perkins' questions, he asked Chase, Henry, or Burrow if you had to pick. I don't know what like the rest of the lineup is important for something like Showdown, but of those players, the one I have the most exposure to, it is Ja'Marr Chase. So I'm going to say if you are just looking to roster one of those guys, and also another thing too is if you have, yeah, I'm just going to say Ja'Marr Chase of those options.
Okay. It's a tough question to answer though. It really is.
Yeah. I mean, another part of this too is like if I'm playing Burrow, I probably want to have Chase in the lineup. I'm more apt to have lineups with Chase that don't have Burrow than Burrow lineups that don't have Chase.
Where are you at on Chase Brown today? Because this is a guy who, like for me, I can tell you right now, I have a lot more in flex than captain. I think he's a solid play, not because I love the matchup. Although Baltimore has ceded a lot of receiving yards to running backs, I don't like this matchup on the ground for Chase Brown. Another thing, their left tackle for Cincinnati, Orlando Brown, was ruled out. Their rushing production is much worse with him out of the lineup. They already faced the toughest run defense in the league, allowing 3.4 yards per attempt, fewest yards per game, 76.5 yards per game. Now, does that mean that guys can't have good games against them? I'm not saying that. It's a really tough matchup on the ground for Chase Brown. What kind of alleviates some of that, though, Greg, is the fact that I know Khalil Herbert's active, which is wild since they signed him 2 days ago. The guy doesn't know. The guy does. They're not going to have him out there on third downs. He's not a pass catcher. He's not a great pass blocker. Chase Brown should still be very involved in the passing game. And if Joe Burrow has less time to throw with his key left tackle, one of the best left tackles in the game, out, that makes it even tougher. So big spot here to pay attention to. But I think Chase Brown, just because he's probably going to be on the field for like 80+% of snaps, he's still super viable on a slate. If this were a main slate, I would confidently tell you I'd have 0 Chase Brown, I think.
Yeah, so I don't have an issue with Chase Brown. I just like the other pay up options more. I like, well, not all of the pay up options more. I do find it a little difficult to get up to the Derrick Henry price tag, which we could talk about, but I prefer Lamar Jackson, I prefer Joe Burrow, and I prefer Ja'Marr Chase. And it's just, you kind of have to make decisions about which guys you're going to be prioritizing. And to me, the quarterbacks and Ja'Marr Chase are higher priorities than the running backs. So Derrick Henry at his price point, 11,200. I know he's been ridiculous this season. I know Chase Brown was great last week, but if you look at our projections, Chase Brown, Derrick Henry, they are nowhere near Lamar Jackson's projection, not near Joe Burrow's projection, not near Ja'Marr Chase's projection. So it's hard for me to pay up for those running backs when I could pay up for the passing games. And that's the direction that my lineups are leaning.
Can we agree, though, that it's also really tough to project a guy like Derrick Henry?
Yeah, because he's going to have like 6 carries for 2 yards. Somebody's going to make a snort. I've done this multiple times with Derrick Henry. I'll be like, hey, look, Derrick Henry looks shitty today. And then all of a sudden, 79-yard touchdown run. And it's
That's
like,
what I mean.
Right there it happens. Oh, and then also, he gets down to the 1-yard line. And it's like, who's going to run the ball from the 1?
Guaranteed.
Lamar Jackson? Is it going to be Derrick Henry? So the thing I don't like about Derrick Henry, first, he's super, super expensive. But also, because he isn't involved in the passing game, he's really relying on either short touchdown runs when they get to the 1-yard line and he getting the touches over Lamar Jackson, or you need him to break those 70, 80-yard touchdown runs, which he's certainly capable of doing. But I think the production of Burrow, Chase, Jackson, it's going to be more consistent more often than not.
Yeah, it's so tough with Henry because he's like, the guy has almost 1,100 rushing yards in 9 games. He's averaging well over 100 yards per game. And, has there been a guy, you guys have been probably, many of you playing DFS for a long time, watching these shows. you understand this as well as we do. Like, has there ever been a guy since we've been playing DFS where people are just so out on him every year, every single week, yet there he is every single time, just like, oh, he dropped 30 again. Oh, he didn't have a single reception, but he had 30 fantasy points and no one wanted to play him because he was too expensive. I hate when he's on the slate because I agree with everything you're saying, but there is nobody more uncomfortable to fade than Derrick Henry.
Other than maybe Lamar Jackson, and you kind of have to make those decision points because
but I'm saying Lamar's always going to project higher. So like Lamar's an easier guy not to fade.
Yeah. Their ownership is, it's not even, I mean, there's a difference between them, but it's not like, it would be different to me if Derrick Henry was like 10% owned and Lamar Jackson was like 60 or 70% owned, but that's not really the case. I mean, Lamar Jackson's 48% owned in the flex. Derrick Henry is 32% owned in the flex. And then in the captain spot, Lamar's 20% owned. Derrick Henry's 10% owned. So there's more ownership on Lamar Jackson, but it's not like it's 2x the ownership overall or anything like that.
Yeah, it's true. Are we, so would you say Lamar is your favorite pay up option today?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. It also helps that he's just not crazy popular, which is usually the case on Showdown sites. Now it's going to be different if we talk about FanDuel and in particularly the MVP spot where he's projected for 50% ownership. And then I think you have a couple decision points to make because if you're playing Lamar Jackson and you're using all the salary on FanDuel, here's what's happened. You've built a lineup that's going to be duped with everybody else who's in the field. So I think if you're playing on FanDuel, you have to do one of two things. You either have to do the uncomfortable thing of getting away from Lamar Jackson in the MVP spot, and maybe that's where you're hoping for the Derrick Henry short touchdown runs, which I do think makes sense from a game theory perspective, because whenever you get a touchdown of Derrick Henry, it should come at the expense of Lamar Jackson. They're definitely negatively correlated players. So either get away from Lamar Jackson in the MVP spot or build a lineup that leaves a bunch of salary on the table. If you don't do one of those things, then you're going to be playing a pretty heavily duped lineup considering all the MVP ownership going to Lamar Jackson. If I look at my top projected lineups, the way that they are mostly working out, it is Lamar Jackson lineups that are leaving salary on the table. That's the majority of them. There's a couple of lineups that's like a Joe Burrow or Derrick Henry or Chase Brown or something like that, or Jamar Chase. But I personally prefer Lamar Jackson in the MVP spot and then just leave at least $1,000 in salary on the table.
Okay, and I'm fine with that. Donald Duck said, sorry I'm late. Is Burton active? Burton's active, baby. Yes, he is.
Burton's active. Khalil Herbert's active because I know people were asking about that.
How much Burton do you have?
25%.
Okay, that's around where I'm at too. I don't have any in the captain, but I do have Burton there at 20%. So I'm okay with that.
I think totally I have two Burton captain lineups, so like not significant.
You do have two. Okay, like I said, I'm playing fewer lineups. I screwed up today. And just forgot to enter contests. But yeah, Charlie Kohler's another one I've seen pop up in chat.
Yeah.
You know, he did have like a 55-yard touchdown reception the other week. This is another zero spot, or maybe he gets a couple of targets. I don't necessarily know what to tell you about Charlie Kohler. He's dirt cheap. You know, he's what, almost minimum salary.
600.
I'd say like this. I said the same thing to Matt this morning, that if there was one guy all the way down there, not including Germaine Burton, because I think he's the best punt, he's the best value, you know, in his range. But if there was one guy all the way down there, like sub 1,000 that I would go to, it's without question Charlie Kohler. I think he's actually the only viable option down there at the bottom.
Yeah, he's kind of popular, like not like overall, but relative to other guys who are $600 we see in Showdown, he's pulling 20% ownership. So it's not like you're getting some kind of sneaky guy or anything like that. The field is there. It makes sense. If you're going to go to somebody who's just dirt cheap, he's the one guy who actually projects for fantasy points. And we've got him projected for like 4 fantasy points. So there's an actual projection on him. With usually when you're punting with somebody, it's like, hey, look, this guy's 600 and he's projected for 1.2 fantasy points. Maybe he has a catch. And then he looks kind of okay. The reason Kohler stands out is twofold. First off, he actually has a projection to him for a really cheap punt, pulling 4 fantasy point projection. But also, there's so many good studs to pay up for on the slate. This isn't like when you and I have talked about like I'm trying to think of some of the other shitty Thursday. This isn't like a Patriots Jaguars primetime game where we're not sure who to pay up for. There's a scenario where Derrick Henry, Lamar Jackson, Jamar Chase, like all have good games. And then it's just, you need a punt in the lineup. And that's where Charlie Kohler, it might not even matter how many fantasy points he scores. It's just, you might just, if all the studs go off, you just need a punt guy in there to make the salary work. And so that in itself makes Kohler make the most sense. Then on top of it, he's actually projected okay for somebody's price point. So I think the ownership's about efficient at around 20%, but pretty clearly the sub 1K guy to play.
Okay. I think we have to spend a little bit of time on Mike Gesicki here.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned everything at the top. Like, all of the numbers look great when he's on the field. He's not on the field all that often. I am getting a lot. I'm not boosting him down. I could understand why people would want to. Matt said it this morning. He's probably going to boost I'll say de-boost him, negative boost him a little bit in the Sims tool. That's fine. I have 60 total percent between captain and flex. It does sound like a lot. It is a lot, but you might just see another game. First of all, I don't believe Baltimore's pass defense is going to finish out the season as bad as they started it, right? Like, no team is allowing more yards per game. When you look at the guys that they have back there in the secondary, there is zero excuse to be this bad. You know, you would think this was like Carolina or something. It's not. It's the Baltimore Ravens. You have Marlon Humphrey, you have Wiggins, you have Hamilton, you have all of these guys back there that have proven over the years to be very good. I know sometimes they fade quicker than others. Marcus Williams being another one. That's a lot of good players, Greg. And I've watched a lot of Ravens games this year. I assume you have as well. So many tight window throws have been completed with this team. Like, yes, they had some breakdowns defensively against Cincinnati in week 5, but they've had so many times where it's like, wow, that was just a perfect pass by Burrow or by Jaden Daniels or by Patrick Mahomes. They faced some great quarterbacks as well. So I do think that they will be better than they've been. However, they're clearly a pass funnel defense. You simply can't run on this team. So it's totally possible that Gesicki sees another 9 targets in a spot like this and is the de facto wide receiver 2 behind Jamar Chase with T. Higgins out. So I'm okay rolling the dice on a $6,600 Gesicki today, assuming that Burrow's just going to have to throw the football.
Yeah, and another point on that too is that Gesicki played so well last week and has been so good without T. Higgins. I think the most likely scenario also is that he just plays more snaps and runs even more routes than he's been playing.
That's also possible.
Time at this point.
Yeah.
He had, what did he finish with? 100 receiving yards and 2 touchdowns last week. He was huge for them. So I think he's played so well that he just forced himself into more playing time. Then whenever he's on the field, you know it's going to be a passing situation anyway. Because like you mentioned, he's not in the game for running scenarios anyway. So yeah, I think Gesicki is a really good mid-range target.
Okay, another guy. We're doing pretty. We're trying to help you guys out here as far as pacing goes. So apologies for like just being all over the place, but we only had 45 minutes today. How about Deontay Johnson? Because personally, I don't really think he's viable. If I were to get burned by Deontay Johnson, I think I could just live with it, Greg.
I don't really have any. Have you seen what his props are?
Like 21 yards last I looked or something.
His over under, it's 1.5 receptions juiced towards the under.
And then what, like 21 yards, right? Or 18 yards or something.
It's different places. I've seen it as low as 18, as high as like 20. I think one book might have like 25.5 Fanatics or something like that. Yeah, it's really low props. I don't have interest in Deontay Johnson. If he plays a bigger role than expected, then yeah, I'll just end up being screwed today. But it's hard for me to want to, and he's not even his props aren't even comparable to like Gesicki to Gesicki. It's not comparable. Even like if you ask me who has more fantasy points, Deontay Johnson or Charlie Kohler, that would be a tough one.
You're not wrong. Like, I mean, here's a good one for you. His prop isn't even remotely comparable to Mark Andrews, and he's more expensive than Mark Andrews.
Yeah, I can't play him. I don't have any lineups with him.
I don't either. Plus, it's like, all right, well, DeAndre Hopkins in his second game with Kansas City ended up going nuts. Mm-hmm. That was a Monday night game. He had 7+ days to prepare for that and learn more. What's Deontay Johnson at? 4? Because it's a short week for his second game.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember which day was the trade. It's less than a week.
It
And
was
then
right
even,
around the same time as Hopkins, wasn't it? I think
no,
it
he was
was,
traded after Hopkins.
but only like a day or two after Hopkins.
Let's see, Deontay Johnson trade.
Probably like a Wednesday, and Hopkins was a Tuesday or something, or a Monday.
Let's see, October 29th. So it's been a little over a week.
Okay. Yeah. Right.
Plus, he's been banged up. That's another part of this.
And Hopkins was traded.
October.
Oh, you're right.
24th.
You're right. Like 5 days prior to that. Okay. So I'm getting the days mixed up, but the point remains. Like he's been with him for, wait, really? The 29th is when he got traded? I guess it's unimportant, but either way.
Yeah, 29th.
Wow. You're right. I can't get there. Yeah, I'd rather pay 600 for Charlie Kohler, honestly. Kicker's perfectly fine. High total game, you're often going to get a little bit less of them, but Justin Tucker, despite his uncharacteristically rough season, is still in play, as he always is. You know who I'm not getting to a lot of right now, and maybe there's people watching, maybe they feel totally different. I have 30% total Zay Flowers, which on another slate, you might have 70% of him. I have none at captain right now. Granted, playing fewer lineups tonight than I usually do, but I don't have a lot of Zay Flowers today. At least, well, I do, but not a ton at all.
Yeah, I have sub 20% of Zay Flowers as well. And this is also where maybe this is where Deontay Johnson actually does play a little bit of a role, where it's like Deontay Johnson, a handful of snaps he plays, maybe a couple of targets he gets that could take away from Zay Flowers a little bit. As far as Zay Flowers goes, it's not that I really have an issue with him as much as there's so many good studs to play on the slate. And the three, once again, that I'm prioritizing, it's Lamar Jackson, it's Joe Burrow, it's Jamar Chase. I would love to come on and tell you guys that, hey, I'm playing lineups with Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Jamar Chase, Derrick Henry, and Zay Flowers, but it's not viable. I have to make a cutoff somewhere, and then I could only have so many guys I'm overweight to the field to, and I'm about half the field on Zay Flowers.
Question, super chat. Thanks, Quan. Kohler or Hill with Mitchell back? What do y'all think? Honestly, well, first of all, they're just totally different price points. So I can't even, I can't,
it's like $5,000 separating them.
I can't answer that question, but I can tell you this. I do not think Keaton Mitchell is going to have a significant enough role tonight to make a difference one way or the other. Derrick Henry's not threatened to top that depth chart in the backfield. Justice Hill has been very impressive as a pass catching back. I understand Keaton Mitchell last year prior to the injury had a few really nice runs, really big runs, but that team was constantly dealing with injuries. Gus Edwards is like a, 2 yards and down type of guy, and they just didn't have anybody. I like Keaton Mitchell, but I think he has zero impact in this game, Greg.
Yeah, it's really hard to see. Like I'm seeing people in the chat, and then Chris Williams wanted to make sure that you saw that we saw the super chat too. We'll hit on that in a second. But yeah, Keaton Mitchell, it's impossible for me to expect him of any kind of significant role. He's going to be the third running back. He's more likely today to have 0 touches than he is to have like 5 or more.
Oh my God, yeah. The way he gets there is he has like 2 carries and one of them breaks for a 50-yard touchdown. Yeah. Otherwise, he has no chance. He's not getting goal line carries. So he would, if I had to project his rushing attempts, I would put it at, honestly, like 1.5, probably juice the over a little bit, Greg, but I wouldn't bet either side of it.
Yeah, I'm not even sure if there are props for Keaton Mitchell. I'm checking.
I can't imagine there are.
Keaton Mitchell. Oh, there are. Holy shit, are these terrible though? Plus 440 to score a touchdown. His rushing prop is over under 13.5 yards.
Okay. Which, yeah, I mean, that actually might be an under spot.
It's just so hard because like he could get a couple touches in like garbage time. Like I don't like to bet props that are that low.
I don't mind it with backup running backs if I think that they're actually not going to get significant work.
The other issue too is one of the more likely ways that wins is he doesn't touch the field and then it voids. So I don't like that not being an out. Like he has to play and get a limited amount of touches for it to win.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, like Pinnacle's got 13.5, the under at -134. FanDuel has -110. Yeah, I don't know. I'm tempted. We'll see. Still got a few minutes here. I'm surprised he has a prop at all, honestly. Any other spots you want to hit on? We still have 5 minutes before we lock here.
Yeah. Chris Williams super chats. First, Chris, thank you for gifting the
Oh,
YouTube
thanks,
memberships.
Chris. Yeah.
And then also Chris says, what the hell is my problem? He says he just atoned and he wants everybody else to do the same. Bring yourself some good karma. So Chris just reminding everybody, number one, supporting the channel, but then also telling everybody to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already.
Coda Bear, crazy question. Could you fade Burrow? I think Ravens D shuts him down tonight. What do you mean by fade Burrow? Like if you're playing one lineup, yeah, you can fade him. If you're playing 100 lineups to have some lineups without him, absolutely. Would I play 20 lineups and none of them have Joe Burrow? Absolutely not. Would not even be a question for me.
Yeah, and then a couple questions from Discord. Hey, I'm Drew95. Wanted to know who should he be using in the captain spot for cash games? Lamar Jackson. And then, hey, I'm Drew wants to know, the Einsteinium asked, do we have any interest in Keaton Mitchell, which we just hit on? So we covered that one. But yeah, captain, MVP, whichever site you're playing on, it's pretty clearly Lamar Jackson, the multiplier spot.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any interest in Travis Scott said you're crazy if Bo Nix carves them up. Imagine Burrow, who started 10-10 last week. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not confident saying Bo Nix carved them up. Like he had 223 passing yards, 0 touchdowns, and 1 interception. So I guess our different definitions of carving up are slightly different here.
Yeah, Joe, here, Bo Nix carved up the Panthers defense.
Correct. And the Saints, if I recall correctly.
He actually had a pretty shitty game against the Ravens, to be honest.
Against the Ravens?
Yeah.
Yeah, dude.
They lost 41-10. He had a 60 passer rating or something.
No. He completed less than 58% of his passes.
Yeah. No, he was bad that game.
It was Cortland Sutton that had the 100-yard game. So if you look at him, you're like, that's pretty good. I bet Ravens -9 in that game. It was just one of those, like, Ravens get back on track and Denver's not nearly as good as they've looked. But yeah, I don't know. You want Burrow in this spot. Are you getting to any guys like Rashad Bateman today though, or Justice Hill? Because I have very little of those guys.
Let me see.
They're hard to get to at those price points, especially so with
Justice
Andrew.
Hill. Just Keaton Mitchell being around is going to hurt Justice Hill. He's still the pass catching back on the team, but any touches that Keaton Mitchell gets, they're not coming away from Derrick Henry. They're coming away from Justice Hill, and he's not all for a backup running back to be priced in the 5K range. Yeah, I don't like getting to Justice Hill. And then the other one, who was the other player you'd ask me about again?
Bateman.
Bateman. I'd rather play Bateman than Hill, but I don't have much of either of them.
We had a comment. Oh, Bateman is very interesting, especially if Johnson's snap count stays low. Yeah. It's just such like a boomer bust spot, generally bust. Here, I always encounter this issue. Like, and I say it all the time on these shows. I know you do too, Greg. There's only so many guys we can say, like, yeah, I'm playing a lot of. You could always just go down the list and say, he's a nice play. That looks good. He's solid. That's good. And then you guys leave with your head spinning going, well, they didn't actually say anything. Like you can go on a show and just go, yeah, I think, like, and just cover your ass. And then and then one of those 80 guys you like goes off, you're like, see, I was all over it. But really, you didn't do anything. So guys like Bateman, whether he goes off or not, it's just, he's tough to get to today. Hill is tough to get to today. You know, there's a lot of these guys at their respective price points where you have Mark Andrews way cheaper, projects, you know, better. And then you have Mike Gesicki, a little bit more expensive, projects better as well.
Yeah, that was the point I was going to make too, is that if you're trying to decide who you want to play in the mid-range, there's just better options than those guys. So Bateman doesn't show up in lineups for me. Justice Hill doesn't show up in lineups for me. But if somebody was making a 1v1 decision between the two, I would tell them to go Bateman. But the slate locked, so it would probably not help them as much at this point.
Nope. Anthony with the great question, is Money McPherson going to be money tonight? Dude, this could be a kicker night where these guys move it in between the 20s and there's like 8 field goals. We'll see, man. Anyway, hey, you guys, always appreciate you hanging out. I know we had a shorter show today. Tried to do the best we could. I think we got a lot of info in. Follow Greg at G. Ehrenberg DFS, me at Laffy_D on the Twitter. Shout out to Jordan for producing. And Greg, we'll catch him back here tomorrow morning, matter of fact, for our favorite show of the week.
Yep. Next channel on the YouTube channel. The next show on the YouTube channel is going to be Loughran and I first thing in the morning. Oh, no, never mind. Josh is before us, but that means screw him. The next important show, it'll be Loughran.
Yeah, there you go. Subscribe to the channel. Don't forget. Appreciate you guys. Good luck tonight. Make sure you're rocking that. Yo, go put that plug. That's the Stokastic avatar and you win tonight. You're going to be pissed off. You don't get one of those beautiful rings or free months of Stokastic Max. Stokastic.com/HOF. Download that shit. Get it up there now. I'm telling you, that dog picture can wait. We'll see you back here tomorrow. Peace.